Hey everybody, it's Alex here from the A1 Photo Fun YouTube channel. This is going to sort of be a review and a bit of an overview. I mean, overviews are kind of dead on YouTube, but this is just going to be me giving my thoughts and impressions on my time with the Canon AE1 program. This is one of Canon's most successful cameras. This was introduced in 1981, I believe, after, I think 5 years after the original Canon AE1 came out. The program is essentially the same camera. It's a 35mm camera using film. Now, I mentioned in my previous video, I originally got into photography last summer in 2016. I did a sponsored video review for a company, and the video review overall was excellent. But a lot of feedback I got from people was that the stills were a bit lacking. And that's because I shot all my still photos on a smartphone, the Asus Zenfone 2 Laser, sort of the photography or camera. It just takes better photos than the other versions of the camera or of the of that phone, but it still was lacking. It just doesn't compare to a DSLR camera. So I originally got started on a Canon T3 that I was able to borrow, and I may do a video on that at some point, but for a while I was just big on Canon cameras. Now I got this camera because I took a film photography course at Moravian College. It was all shot in black and white, and the folder beneath is my portfolio for the class. The class is over, and I learned so much about photography just on this camera. Now, when the class began, nobody was like, I know at some colleges you're able to just borrow cameras that are just provided for courses and such, but for this course there's no camera provided. We found out right away that we needed to find ourselves a vintage SLR photography camera and try to have it in within like a week or so. So I panicked. A lot of people looked online. Not rich by any means, and I was waiting on my refund check for the semester. Usually when I take out a loan or anything like that, I'll take out extra money. And I do that to cover the cost of textbooks. And in this case, we needed to get a camera. So I looked online, Amazon, eBay. These vary in prices. The Canon AE1 program, I've seen them as cheap as almost $100. And then better condition ones that come with a few things can go for about $250. Oh, actually, when I got this camera checked out and appraised at a camera shop, he said this was actually worth $250. By their standards. So that's pretty good, and the camera works great. I'm going to show you the photos in a moment, but I actually picked this up off of the Let Go app. Similar to OfferUp, it's just an app you can download on the Google Play Store or the iPhone App Store. You can just search up items that you're looking for locally and then pretty much buy them off of people. If you plan on doing anything like that, be sure to do that in public at a good time of day. I actually picked this camera up super late at night at a Wawa. It was like 11 p.m., 10 p.m. So yeah, just be careful, just in the event that something could possibly happen. Just always be careful and try to be safe. But I picked this up off of Let Go, and the guy didn't understand the value of this camera. He actually sold it to me for, I think it was $80 or $70. I think it was $70. He tried going a little higher at first, but I got him to go down a few dollars. Just haggle with him back and forth for a little while. So this is the camera I shot the entire course with. When I originally first got this camera, I tried it out with some film. I bought color film, and I'm going to display a few of the photos. I was just really pleased with how it looks. Again, this camera's kind of old, and just the way it shoots photos, it kind of has that, like, it just has a vintage feel to it. It doesn't matter really what kind of film you use, it just has a certain aesthetic that's completely different in original, and it's just very, very cool and nostalgic. So as you can see, some of these photos came out pretty nice. And then for the actual course, we pretty much learned the basics. Now, this is an SLR camera. It's a single lens reflex. DSLRs are digital single lens reflex cameras. And then the newer thing, the new wave, are mirrorless cameras. So when you shoot a photo, can't really show you it on camera, but light enters through this lens here. There's a mirror in here, pretty much, a lens that reflects the image up to the viewfinder back here. And this little slot here is where you slip in the part of the container for the film, and this will let you know what kind of film you're shooting to set your ISO, which is the sensitivity to light on the top here. We have the controls for the camera. This is the shutter speed. So if you're completely new to photography and you don't really know what you're doing, you probably wouldn't start with a film camera, but if you're into film photography, it does have a program mode, which is just like an automatic sort of setting. The camera picks the shutter speed. Here's your aperture ring. There's an A for auto. If you want to get to that, press that button there and go to A. And then up here is the zoom, 28 to 70. And here's your focus ring. I really like the focus on this camera. When I use the Canon T3, looking through that viewfinder, I didn't find it to be very helpful, and the autofocus on that camera wasn't that great. It's nothing like the Panasonic G7. Of course, this is a much newer camera, but this one, it was very easy to tell if something was in focus, and that's one of my biggest favorite things about this camera. It's just this viewfinder is very large, and I don't think I'll be able to get to focus, but there's a light meter in there, and you can learn how to use that. Up here on the shoe mount is where you can put accessories such as a flash and such. Where else? So you can operate the film, settings, the ISO right here, and you can wind it. You can also pop open the tray. I believe there's still battery power in this thing. Yeah, so we're good. There's also no film in here, so it's all good to open. So here's the inside of the camera. You would put your film there, load it into the sprockets, the shutters here, and how this pretty much works is the camera will expose the film to the light and what you're viewing. This cuts off for a second when this opens, and then the image pretty much gets printed onto the film. You would wind the next photo here. Oh, it's actually on lock, so you unlock that. Okay, so the next photo would be loaded, and then you would set your shutter speed depending on how bright it is. If you're outside, middle of the day, you may use 1000 or 500. As it gets darker, or if you're taking photos indoors, you would need to slow this down to different settings. So here's like a 1,000th of a second very quickly, which is very fast. I'll show you right here. You can barely see that. Now let's slow it down to 1 second. Wind the arm, which actuates this, loads the next part of the film, and that's how that works. So very cool. With this film, you take up to 36 exposures and then be able to develop it. In the class I took, we did it pretty much all start to finish, take all the photos for our various projects and assignments, and then from there you would put the film in the developing tank in a completely dark room. It was a hassle, and I would usually prefer to do that with somebody also loading film into a developing tank in case at times the film would get stuck and be a hassle. Then you develop all the film in the developing tank, and then from there you can view your film afterwards. It's safe to take a look at, and you pick what photos you would develop from there. And then all the photos were developed on Ilford multi-grade 4. They were 8 by 10. All right, so here's the photo paper we used in the class. This is the Ilford multi-grade 4 RC Deluxe. This is with the pearl finish. This is a 50 sheet container, and in the total of the course, I used about 70 sheets or so. I made 70 photos. This stuff is pretty expensive. It's like $1 a sheet, so this was a pretty costly class. The film was at least about $5, depends on where you get it and such. We did a lot of stuff in the class, different assignments, different focuses. Some projects were on depth of field, and some were on lighting and such. So I'm just going to run you through some of my photos in the course. and then I'll show these on a larger format. So this was from the first assignment. It was just to shoot a roll of film, and I got pretty creative with it right away. As you guys know from my main channel, if you guys follow me on the AL7 YouTube channel, I do a lot of stuff with firearms and such. I'm going to try to keep that stuff to a minimum on this channel. It's just going to be, again, focused on photography. But I took a cool few photos of a scope when I was at the range, just doing some target practice, and I tried to get that dual rendered sort of look where you can see the zoom of the scope and then see everything else. And some of these photos came out pretty well. The ones that are completely dark are ones that did not come out so well. I didn't really completely understand the light meter at the time. And this is one of the photos I took in the course and printed. This came out really well. Here's another one of a bridge at Sand Island. There's Bethlehem Steel. And so yeah, here's the full exposure of my buddy Tom. Very nice looking photo. And I have framed a lot of my photos in the course, actually, the ones I really enjoyed. Here's the photo of the bridge at Sand Island there. And I'll have that shown. All these photos will be shown at the end of the video here. So this was my second roll, and we were doing the subject. It was to take a picture of a person or object from various distances, so I picked a few out. And again, I was learning lighting at the time, but most of these came out pretty well. So the one submitted, there's my subject at one distance. And the next following photo was taken further back. Essentially the same pose, different angle, just at a different distance, but everything's very clear. Again, the photos that this camera takes are they're very clean and very well detailed with this film. The next assignment, I put two assignments actually on one roll of film. This was vantage point, as you can see in some of the photos, and then some of them were shadows. So that's why some of the images are very dark. We're just supposed to work with contrasting shadows. So just moving on. Here's an image of Hotel Bethlehem. Kind of needed to expose the sky more. It's a bit of a cloudy day. It's an okay picture. Nothing too fancy. Here's one at Vantage Point in one of the new health science building at Moravian. I liked how this came out. It reminds me of that, I forget the name of that, Penrose staircase, I think is the name of it. But I think that's the correct name of that kind of staircase. That's what it reminded me of. Pretty cool photo. This is probably one of my favorite images captured in the course. This was taken at midnight for the Shadows project, and I had to have the camera set to bulb mode, and I held the shutter down for about, I think, 20 seconds the way I had it set up. And this was, again, very late at night. I didn't have the entire image in focus. That wasn't my goal here. At this point, I pretty much knew what I was doing for the course. It just has that eerie, ooky, spooky sort of look going on. And the art professor instructor really liked this photo. He said this was one of his favorite images that he's seen for the semester. And just has that eerie look with the windows and the glare from the lights on the inside of the house. Since it's not completely in focus here, it's like just illuminating so much light there, and the fence is sort of blurred out. I sort of have the center of the image in focus, and then the house to the off sides are kind of blurred out as well. This was another submission for the Shadow project. This was taken like 5 p.m. midday. Just have different contrasting shades of the shadows. Shadow being casted here from the top. There's a shadow being made here. You can sort of see the image of the curtain. And then these are, they just flash at night. They charge with little solar panels at the top. Just little objects around the house. So we're moving towards the end of the course. For this, we're on this roll of film is my depth of field project, as well as our final. We're supposed to do a series, and within the series, I tried doing 2 series. This was around November, December in the course, and I gave myself two options. I tried to do like a Christmas themed photo shoot, so there's some photos up there around Christmas type of objects, and then I tried doing depth of field with my buddy Joel, and they didn't really come out the way I wanted them to. One of my series was historic firearms, so I have several images of firearms. This is actually what I submitted for my final my series. Actually, some of the firearms here aren't historic. My art professor he wasn't anti-gun or pro-gun. He was just sort of in the middle, but he didn't know anything about firearms, so it seemed like a good idea to submit that. My Christmas photos, I didn't really care for how all of them came out. And also, when I developed this roll of film, I think this was it, my last roll in the course, when I loaded into the developing tank, it sort of got jammed, and some of the images were scratched a bit, which really was a bummer. That was the first time it happened. But all the historic firearms looked okay. So that was what I submitted. Also for depth of field, I took these two images of these Christmas lights. One's all in focus, and the other one just has sort of a light in focus. So here's the first image of the light. And then at the end here, here's the contrast of depth of field. I actually didn't use a tripod for this one, and I'm really surprised because they look like they're leveled exactly the same, but I had more of the bush in focus and everything. So I was really pleased with how that came out. There's an image of a Cold War pistol, the Makarov. It's some of its ammunition below. I know some of you guys may not be pro-gun or anything like that, and that's okay. This is actually an airsoft replica of the 1911. Served in the U.S. Army and other divisions of the armed forces here in America. This is a World War II Mosin Nagant. That would count as a historic firearm. This is not a historic firearm, but it can definitely pass as one. This is a CZ 550 American. This is generally used just for hunting. And I think I have one more image here. This is sort of a historic firearm. It's from 1950s. It's a 1953 Stevens Model 820B. Pretty cool, iconic looking shotgun. Actually took all these photos here with my green screen, and just these all generally came out pretty nice. So that's really it for all of my photos taken on the Canon AE1 program. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions regarding this camera, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. I know this was a bit of a long, lengthy video, but I just wanted to give you my overall thoughts and impressions on this camera. If you do decide to pick one up online, it may come with a different lens. This one, I got lucky when I picked this up with its variable zoom. But most of the people in the course the professor wanted everyone to have one that just had a 50mm on it, a 50mm lens, so people wouldn't cheat by zooming, and people will learn to get close to their subject and take photographs from there. So I kind of did that, and then sometimes I did get a little lazy, I suppose, and would use the zoom function just to make my life a little easier. So overall, very pleased with this camera. I don't really use it much now that the course is over. I pretty much just take all my photos on the Panasonic G7. It's just a hassle, and it's very expensive to do film photography compared to a digital camera. You got to get the film developed, and then you got to buy the film, get the paper, or, I mean, you could just take your film to places, get it shipped down, developed from there. That's another option, but it is rewarding, and it makes you appreciate your work, taking photos and developing it all on your own on a camera like this. It definitely taught me to take my time. I think that's sort of the point of the course. You take your time, be very careful, trying to have all the composition correct and such, and just be very careful with the manual settings, and try to just learn the basics and all the functions on this camera, because everything here pretty much translates to any DSLR or mirrorless camera. So if you're looking to start into photography, if you're maybe taking a photography course, you can get into film photography. It's just pretty expensive. Expect to spend definitely over $100 on a Canon AE1 or Pentax. I think it's a K1000. Nikon definitely has a lot of film cameras. So does Olympus. They all do cost quite a bit. So there's that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I tried to make it very in-depth and informative. Feel free to look online at classic film cameras. It's not for everybody, but you're, again, taking it for a course, or if you just like classic black and white photos, you can definitely do that. You can also take color photos on this camera. It's been a very fun course, and I definitely learned a lot. And I think because of this course, I just learned to appreciate photography more, because it has changed so much over the years. So I'll see you guys in the next video. This is Alex from the A1 Photo Fun YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.